Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to talk about tie downs and how a tie down is actually used. Growing up, this is a question that I asked a lot to a lot of people, and the main answer I always got was they use it for balance. They didn't explain the mechanics behind it or how exactly it's used for balance or anything like that. So I'm going to break all of that down as simple as I can for you guys today in this video, and help some of you guys decide whether or not you need to try a tie down or not, and how to properly get your horse to work on a tie down. The first thing to really look at is how a horse performs naturally and how they are balanced naturally. Majority of the people know that horses use their head and neck as balance. The big thing to look at too is what it is naturally, especially in just a straight run. You'll see their heads a little bit lowered and their noses out. If you watch horse racing a lot, this is going to be your main position when you are running. If you are looking at going around a barrel and stuff, this is where we really like to engage our hindquarters, have them utilizing their rear end. This is going to be the position a lot of the times where the tie down is most used in barrels. It is going to be when you are checking, where you check your horse to go into that pocket and they need to start slowing down for that turn. They may hit that tie down and it slows them down a little bit in order to slow down for that turn. Or when they're going into that turn, they're really gathering up around the back side of that barrel. They'll hit it then at that moment as well, and going out of their barrel, they'll hit it then as well. Of course, as always, all horses are different. We have many different styles. Every horse will utilize a tie down to their own type of style. I guess I should say. Prime example that I love and I've been watching a lot of is Sherry Cervi. Is my favorite barrel racer. Stingray, in my opinion, is the one horse I think utilizes the tie down very beautifully. She does her own work, but that tie down's there when she needs it, and you can see in multiple different runs when she utilizes the tie down a lot, or you'll see runs where she doesn't use it all that often, and Sherry has done beautiful job at preparing Stingray for a tie down and things like that, and I think that is an idealistic way to utilize a tie down. Another horse you have is Sister. Haley has done a wonderful job with Sister. There is no doubt about that. She uses a tie down. She uses it more often than what I would say Stingray does. But again, we have different styles. So Sister, just by watching her videos and stuff and rewatching her runs and a lot, I personally would say that Sister utilizes her tie down a lot more, and that she would probably be a horse that I would keep on a tighter tie down than what a regular horse or about average fitted tie down would be. That's kind of how I would picture that. I've never talked to Haley, and I would love to talk to her and have conversations about how she does that, and especially Sherry Cervi as well. I've seen some interviews with where she talks about her tie down and stuff, so we'll talk about that later. But I just wanted to kind of put out there, obviously there's a lot of different styles and stuff, but this is just going to give you a roundabout of an idea to get your brain working and kind of decide what's going to be best for your horse. We know when the horse is going to use the tie down most when we're looking at a horse that is balanced in barrel racing. So a lot of the times you're really going to look at the balance around the barrels. These things that you're going to look for is a lot of their head setting. A really, really high-headed horse can be balanced going around a barrel. That's really preference. But the main thing I look for is going to be the eye level. So their eyes are going to be horizontal with the ground, is going to indicate a big indicator of balance. So if a horse's head is cocked to the side or something, their eyes aren't level with the ground, to me that is going to be a very difficult plane of vision for a horse to see to be balanced. A lot of the times that is going to be a key factor of noticing, oh, this horse is going to be unbalanced. The head set, as far as being too high or too low or anything like that, that's going to be a lot of your style. And so I look at that when I'm looking at the eyes or the back legs. So when you're turning around a barrel, A horse that is set up and balanced around a barrel, the hind leg closest to that barrel is going to be set up under them. They're going to be prepared and turning and using it as like a pivot foot. So that is a big indication of being balanced. Watching the shouldering around the barrel is going to be something that is an indication of balance as well. I find a horse to be most balanced when they are using their core muscles and being rounded out in the back. The reason we're talking about these indications are because when we add tie downs to things, we can either throw off our balance or it can help our balance, all sorts of these things. So when a horse is running and working around a barrel and we're looking at all this, what a horse does is we, of course, use our legs to push off the ground. So this is going to create that energy when they are pushing from their back legs, pushing up off the ground. So when a horse is coming in for balance, their weight up front is going to shift to their hindquarters. So they're going to lift their front end essentially. So they're going to use their back and their ab muscles, their hindquarters, and they're going to take their front end and lift it up off the ground. A lot of this you're going to see when they're coming out of the barrel. This is what I call the loading phase or launch phase. Is really what I mainly call it is the launch phase. So you're going to see a lot of that where the front end's coming off the ground. They're loaded in their hind end and they're using their rear end to launch out of that barrel. This is going to be a big portion of barrels, obviously. Then you also have what I call your gathering phase. This is going to be going in and around your barrel where they're gathering up their front and back end. They're going to be rounded in the back. Core is going to be engaged. Their hind end is going to be engaged. This is going to be their gathering phase. So when we're in this gathering phase, I'll have a diagram here showing from their back foot, that energy is going to run up their hind end, up through their hindquarters, up through the top of their back and through their neck, up to the pole and down the face, out their nose. So that energy is going to travel through that horse. With that energy is also going to come from their front feet, is going to lift up their forequarters, which is going to meet up in the neck and then up the neck, up the pole, and down the face, out through the nose. This is going to be what I call your line of energy. For the sake of this video and simplicity, we're going to call it our extension cord, because I like to think of your face as an extension cord connecting at the pole, your neck is an extension cord connecting above the shoulder, and your withers, your back is an extension cord, and then all the way down from your top of your loin down to your hocks is going to be another extension cord. So all these extension cords, ideally for the horse to work and keep that energy flowing, we want them to connect, right? So if you disconnect an extension cord, you no longer have that power. So what power we're trying to connect is the motor in the hind end connecting to the face up front. And all of this has to work together and be connected in order for that horse to utilize that energy and to keep that hindquarters connected and engaged. So I hope all that makes sense so far. Now that we have kind of a picture idea and how all this energy is going to be connected, let's talk about what happens if we add a tie down to a horse. So that is going to, of course, interrupt a connection or disconnection. There is a right and wrong way to use tie downs. When we're adding a tie down, we've already talked about a horse using their head and neck for balance. They also use their nose for balance as well. So a lot of times for a balanced horse, they're going to have that position. So let's look back at our gathering phase. So our gathering phase is going to tell a lot about where they're going to be lifted in the front. Their neck is going to be slightly up, or it will range from either up to slightly up to even level. And then their nose is going to tell a lot about where their balance is going to be at. If their nose is out forward, so if you think about their nose being out forward, like hers it tends to be a lot, is going to be on the front end. Or if I gather her up and I bring her nose in, she's going to bring that nose in and it's going to make her rock back. Hope that kind of illustrates good enough for you guys. But so if your nose is too far out, you're going to be too far on your front end. If your nose is too far back, then you kind of break that extension cord up in your pole, and when that extension cord breaks, you no longer have that power in the back. So that's why we talk about the extension cord coming through, connecting with everything. So when we add that tie down, it is very, very important that when we put it on, it is fitted correctly. And I don't believe that you just can put it on and then it fit and then you ride around and everything's all great. I personally, when I put on a tie down, I'll put it on how I feel like is going to be your average fit, what I call average anyway. You do the whole testing up on the neck and all that. You think that it's not going to be it's not too long and it's not too short, and then you start at that moment. You ride around, you work, you do some exercises, whatever you need to do, and then you decide for this particular course, do you need it to go shorter? Do you need it to go a little bit longer? You know, where is this horse getting a feel at? So we put a tie down on. If we're bringing their nose too far back, so the tie down's too short, we're going to break that extension cord at the pole. So then again, we have no power in the back. If we don't have any power, what I see a lot as well is that if a horse is either reaching too far up to meet the pole of the tie down, so they're reaching too far up to meet that connection. Because when a horse is running in a tie down, quite often, if they're not trained properly to it, then you get what I call a head reacher. They get really high-headed because they're searching for that balance. They're searching for that connection wherever that stop is, and they start to search for it. When this happens, you have that hollow back a lot. So if they're searching too far up, so say that their nose isn't too far back, their head's too far up, you can break that connection down here in the withers or in the loin, and that creates that hollow back look when we're going into a turn, around a turn, whatever, wherever you're at in the run. But that can create a hollow back, which then in return, because you disconnected your extension cord, you lose that power in the hind end. So it's very important that when we fit our tie down, because not only are they searching for that connection up at the pole, they're searching for the connection at the nose band as well, because that's going to be your main point of what they're going to be pushing on for balance. So if they're searching for that too, then they can stick their nose up, and they can even stick it out trying to look for that. And so that's where we can get our front endy type of horse if we don't have it fitted properly to this horse. So when they meet the tie down, and say that it's all fitted perfectly, we've done our research, we've prepared our horse correctly, and we're putting on the tie down, we figured out where a good fit is for this specific horse, then how exactly are they going to meet it and use it for balance? So when we talk about that extension cord coming up, we've got it fitted to where that extension cord's not broken, and we get it all connected, then what happens is that is allowing that energy to go, and then when they meet that tie down, it allows that energy to stop. So ideally what we're looking at and what we're hoping to happen in that moment is that when they push against that tie down for balance, then we're asking that energy to stop, so that horse can essentially recoil, regroup, gather back up in order to either stop a little bit quicker, or in order to give them a little more something to push against when they are coming out of a turn. So ideally what we're recoiling is this connection. So recoiling that connection from the front and sending it back to the back to where that motor back there can kind of reset quicker, ideally. So having a tie down allows that horse to find that natural headset, that natural balancing position in himself. And I think it's always important to remember that when you're using a tie down, that a horse should not be relying on it or using it the whole time. It's only there to kind of help find that natural movement in itself. So if that horse is naturally high-headed, then just because a horse has a natural conformation most of you already know that it's not always a good thing to have. So we try to use that tie down to help with finding a new natural. So if he's got a naturally higher headset, then we set that tie down to where we make that headset more correct, and so they help in a sense of when they get too high they meet it and then they can come back down. So it's more of like a range of where your headset needs to be, not always relying on it. So when they're running out in the pattern and they're running in between barrels, that tie down should not hinder that horse's length of stride. So there are some horses who typically run in a shorter type of tie down that may have learned to run and push against it during that run, but that's not something I would always really recommend. But I wouldn't recommend a horse that is always relying or pushing on that tie down to perform. We want that horse to perform naturally on its own. It's just not every horse is natural in however their conformation is going to be, or however their headset's going to be, or even their performance, so we have to help them in such a way. Now, I do believe a tie down can be helpful, but that's where the problem comes in with majority of your people. So I think it's important to remember that it shouldn't hinder their running. A lot of horses will learn that when they're running and their tie down set a certain way, that if they are running at a full speed and their head comes too far up, they'll learn that that tie down's there and they need to bring it back down. And so that's going to be your main goal. But then when they go to check or stop and turn or wherever you may be at in the pattern, then their head comes up, they press against it, and like we talked about, that recoil effect for them to have that faster stop, quicker reaction, so to say. So think of a tie down as a quick guideline in the heat of the moment sort of mechanism. You could put bonnets or even martingales in somewhat of a similar position, but of course their mechanism is going to work a little bit different. Always think with a tie down that you're going to have more of a nose restriction versus a bonnet who's going to have more of a pole restriction. So I do think that certain horses work better under different types of restriction according to whatever their style is and whatever type of running horse that is going to be. So things to really focus on before you decide on using a tie down is really focusing on doing a lot of the homework yourself, working on balance with your horse without using tie downs, starting at the ground with that, using trot poles, hill work, all sorts of things of not only strengthening your horse in itself, but using balance work and really trying to encourage your horse to use his body naturally or her body naturally. That's going to be the biggest key factor as far as utilizing a tie down. Sherry Servey once said in an interview that when she only runs in a tie down, she does not practice or ride every day in a tie down. She only runs in it, and then right after the run, she disconnects the tie down. And I feel like that is the main goal that we should really look for in using a tie down, is only running in it, not practicing in it at home, not practicing in it once a while at home. We really need to focus on where our horses lack and how we can help improve our horses naturally in the beginning. Because I think the biggest part of the issues with tie downs is, as I said, Stingray is the best horse I can really talk about. Of course, there's probably other great horses out there who fall in this category, but she's my favorite horse. So she's the main one that comes to my mind. But she utilizes a tie down fabulously, just like the whole using it as a gauge of where she needs it. If she needs a little bit of that help in a little bit of a help in that turn or coming out of the turn or whatever she needs, she doesn't use a tie down all the time. She still uses her body around the barrels, and that's what we need to really strive for, is getting our horses to naturally use their body around that barrel without focusing on the tie down. I really like to think about when I'm running in it. I really don't like to change anything and forget that I even have it on, because if you have a horse that runs at a tie down, it's great to have it and not need it, and rather than need it and not have it kind of situation. But that comes back to that whole having them perform on their own and being able to be prepared for it. Preparing your horse not only physically but mentally as well. They are restricting around the face and the head, and this can confine a horse. Horses are naturally claustrophobic, and so if they feel confined, this is something that some horses that really need to work up to. It can be constricting. So if your horse has never had one, those are things to really think about before just throwing one on your horse. It should not really differ from running in a tie down without a tie down in your end goal. Now your horse may use it more often when you're starting to use it, or you're getting going, or maybe you just have a horrible streak lately and you're just not, your horse isn't getting it, you're not getting it, you're not connecting, something, and your horse may utilize it more often. But in the end, after we've prepared our horse physically, mentally, we've built their strength, they can carry themselves very well, they balance very well, all of the things, then that's where I would say a tie down. You could probably add a tie down if you feel like your horse is just not really, it needs that extra help around a barrel. So I am going to saddle her up, and then we are going to talk about how I would fit a tie down first, starting off with her. So with her, I'm pretty sure she's the last horse that I've ever had on this tie down. But for her, this is kind of how I would have it fitted. I see a lot of the times, of course, we have preferences as far as rope nose, double rope nose, leather, thin leather, whatever, but we're not going to get into all of that. But I do see a lot of rubbing of their cheekbones a lot, and that tends to, of course, bother them because it would bother me. But I do see that a lot. And so I think that it's very important that I like to have a finger in between the cheekbones and the leather in the of the noseband. So I think that's always important to remember. And so for the face portion, this is how I would have it fitted for her. And then we have our tie down. It's nylon. So I also have this hobble, this tie down hobble down here. This is a Hot Head Stalls special. I highly recommend. I have even used a piece of belling twine and just tied it to the O-ring in the middle of your breast collar, or even just tying it like around the breast collar here, just trying to fix it in that situation if you don't have an O-ring. I know some people aren't really making breast collars that have O-rings out there. They're like plates and stuff. But hey, if there's a will, there's a way. And I have been able to do anything with a piece of belling twine. So I highly always recommend to always ride in hobble. But with that being said, I still get very scared about all of this down here. So I'll grab the camera. Down low, you can see right here where all of this is loose. I even worry about that. Some people would call me crazy, but because this would be lifted up here, then you still have that. And then you have, which I've even tied a piece of belling twine down here, so I still have a hobble when I'm running, but I use a piece of belling twine to then just tie this a little bit tighter up here, so that way there's no give down there. See how that just picks that up right there? Just connecting it picks that up. That just makes me feel a lot better. So fitting this in itself, see if I can, typically people touch it to the neck right here, and I would say for this specific horse, even if she's raising her head up, so this is her natural headset most of the time, so I would say that this is maybe a little loose for her. So the typical old style way of checking is pretty good, but you can see there's not a lot of tension up here. So I really would like to see just a little bit more tension. And let's say if we just took that inch out. So if we added that tension, I think that right there would be ideal for her specifically, because it's not too loose. It's just a little bit tight. But of course, like I said in the beginning of the video, every horse is going to be different. And I 100% believe that it's not just checking right here and calling it good. You have to listen to your horse and take notes and kind of figure out how your horse is really going to like it. Do you need it shorter? Do you need it longer? Kind of really pay attention to them and how they're going to like that headset and how they're going to respond to it. So I 100% believe that you're not going to find a perfect fit in just one ride. But that's me personally. So I hope this video kind of explained a lot. Let me know your feedback, or if there's something that you feel like I missed, definitely let me know in the comments, because this is kind of just my own research and watching barrels over and over and over again, and watching professionals and just going to play days and like really trying to take notes, because I feel like a lot of people don't quite understand the mechanism of a tie down 100%. But I hope this helped, and I hope it kind of helps people figure out, you know, where a starting line is on your horse and making them prepared not only physically but mentally for a tie down. I hope this helped, and I hope y'all really liked this video, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.